Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a record-breaking weather pattern that's going to be coming to the United States over the next 7 days. And this is going to bring a lot of different problems, including record-breaking high temperatures to parts of the United States. In addition to this, we're going to be watching for two different large storms, one of which will arrive later this week, bringing some heavy rainfall and isolated severe weather, perhaps even a little bit of snow. But the second storm will come next week, and that storm could pose a lot of different threats, including severe weather, maybe a bit more significant, in addition to the potential for some sort of winter storm, and as well as much cooler weather in parts of the United States. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, and let's begin first with what's happening across the United States right now, and we will begin with the west coast of the United States, and this is an area that has remained very active over the last really few months. I mean, this area has had a lot of showers and even thunderstorms, plenty of rainfall, flooding as well, and we actually have an offshore storm right now that is bringing some showers and thunderstorms across areas in California, in addition to Oregon and Washington. A lot of this activity, though, is really not severe. We had a couple of severe storms yesterday. We even had a tornado warning, but overall, nothing too crazy. We had like 4 damaged wind reports, and that was about it. But in addition to this storm right now is currently offshore, and it's eventually going to move into the United States, and by the time we get to Thursday and Friday, that storm will be located over the central plains. This will eventually bring some showers and storms, maybe even some isolated severe weather to areas in the Mississippi Valley, back into the Ohio Valley. That'll eventually move into the north and east with plenty of rainfall, in addition to a little bit of snowfall, and we'll talk about more details on that in a little bit, so make sure you stay tuned. Back over in the Great Plains, very dry right now. We don't really have much ongoing. Cloud cover extremely minimal. Overall, a very beautiful day for much of the country today. Even down in Florida, along the entire east coast of the United States, there's really hardly any cloud cover right now across the entire country. So enjoy the beautiful weather while it's here. We are really getting an early feel of what spring is going to be here across the United States. But I do want to mention that this is not going to last forever. This is the spring of deception here across the United States, which basically means we still have a shot maybe for one more cold blast before the entire winter is over. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's talk more about the weather pattern that's happening across the United States right now and what is to come over the next 10 days, because we have a couple of different things to watch for. We have the 2 storms in addition to this record-breaking weather pattern that's going to bring record-breaking high temperatures to parts of the United States. Notice this, though, as we go into Wednesday into Thursday, we actually have a very dominant ridge that's currently in place, and this is almost acting like a brick wall. And what I mean by that is that we basically can't have any storms crossing the Rocky Mountains with this strong of a ridge, well, at least for now. Once we go into Thursday, we are eventually going to see this wall break, and that'll allow for a low-pressure system to go right over the Rocky Mountains and eventually into the Central Plains, and that'll bring some showers and even some thunderstorms across areas in the lower Midwest, back into the Ohio Valley, and as well as the Mississippi Valley, then eventually to the East Coast as we get closer to the weekend. So notice this, as we go to Friday into Saturday, that low pressure system will move to the east, and that'll eventually allow for some showers and thunderstorms right along the east coast of the United States. Here's where that cold air mass will be sitting, really cold at where we're talking like sub-zero temperatures back up in areas like Canada. That cold air mass likely not going to dive down enough to the south to the point where we're going to see some sort of winter storm, but there will be a chance for at least a little bit of snowfall across areas, maybe from about Ohio back into New England, but I don't think we're going to be talking about a winter storm by any means out of this particular disturbance. Once we go into early next week, things go again pretty calm across much of the United States by Sunday, and eventually by February 26th, which is on Monday, high pressure builds again, but it will not last as long as this high pressure system. That is because we're likely going to see a strong and perhaps even a large storm enter into the United States, and the computer models have been very consistent with showing a large and strong storm sometime around the end of this month, just around leap year or so. And this storm could very easily bring the threat for severe weather, perhaps even a winter storm. A lot of things could happen with this, but I do want to mention that there is still a high level of uncertainty of exactly where we're going to see severe weather. Will there be a winter storm? All those details are still very unknown, since we're still talking about a storm that is still 7 to 8 days out from happening. So things could very easily change over the next few days, but one thing that appears very likely, again, is that we're probably going to get some sort of large storm here in the United States. In addition to that, the jet stream over the last several days have been indicating a strong jet stream, which means that the winds aloft are going to be fairly strong, around 150 knots or so. This would be supportive of a pretty dynamic severe weather setup wherever this might happen. So that's going to be something that we need to watch for very closely. And we will talk more about the severe weather potential, the future radar with that storm in just a minute. But I do want to touch on the record-breaking record-breaking potential of temperatures over the next 7 to 10 days. And notice this warm air mass across much of the United States from the Midwest back into the Great Plains is going to remain fairly dominant all the way through the end of this week. We will get a bit of a cold air mass coming out of Canada as we go into the weekend across really the Great Lakes and back into the Northeast, but it's not going to be very impressive. And what I mean by that is that we're not talking about an Arctic blast here, but this will bring enough cold air to the East Coast where temperatures will drop a fair amount across these areas. So overall, a pretty normal cold front, I would say, for February, but by no means will this be an Arctic blast. Meanwhile, the Great Plains really not going to see any relief. We're going to go right back to record-breaking temperature potential as we go into early next week. And notice this, temperatures well above average potentially, anywhere from the Midwest back into the Southern Plains. Temperatures will be cranking into the 90s in some spots back down in Texas. Notice this on the temperature anomalies. This is at the surface, so this will give you an idea of what the temperatures will be from average in your particular location. And as we go into tomorrow, temperatures will be as high as 35 degrees above average in North Dakota. That'll definitely break some records up there for high temperatures. Once we go into early next week, by Monday, temperatures could easily crush records. I mean, we're talking the potential for 30 to 35 degrees above average across a large chunk of the Midwest and the Northern Plains, and even back into Texas, many areas around 20 to 25 degrees above average for high temperatures. That is just remarkable for end of February. In terms of temperatures across the Southern Plains, notice many areas tomorrow will be in the 70s, 80s, and even a few spots over near Midland, Texas will be near 94 degrees. This is not a good sign for summer. It might be a cruel summer here across much of the United States. Once we go into next week, again going into Monday, where there could be another day where we see record-breaking high temperatures. This is what the current forecast is on the European model. Notice areas in the Midwest, Northern Plains in the 40s and 50s. We could even see some low 50s into parts of southern Canada, which again is just crazy for this time of the year. Chicago will get close to 60. We'll be close to 65, 70 degrees in parts of Nebraska. And then back into Texas, many areas in the 70s and 80s. Just remarkable for this time of the year. Climate Prediction Center currently forecasting a large majority of the United States to see well above average temperatures for the end of this month and even into early March, the west coast of the United States being the only exception. All right, let's talk more about that large storm next week and as well as the one that's coming this week. Notice this on Thursday, we're going to have a strong pull of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to allow for an isolated risk of severe weather back over in Missouri and southern Illinois. It's a pretty low risk overall. We're talking isolated damaging winds, perhaps a brief tornado. Once we go into Friday into Saturday, that moisture content will start to flow back over on the east coast of the United States. No severe weather right now expected along the immediate east coast, but we might see some showers and maybe a few rumbles of thunder with some of those storms. By Saturday into Sunday, drier weather returns, and by next week, we'll get another strong southerly pull out of the Gulf of Mexico. And if there is to be any severe weather next week, which it looks likely will at least have some low risk of severe weather, we'd be looking really anywhere from the Midwest back into the Southern Plains for any risk of severe weather. But exactly how high that risk is and all those exact details are still extremely unknown. And the other thing we need to keep in mind is that we don't know exactly where the severe weather will happen. Will it happen back up in the Midwest? Will it happen in the Southern Plains? Those details are very unknown, but I do want to mention that if there is any higher level of risk of severe weather, like an enhanced risk or a slight risk, it's more likely than not to be back down here. We're not really talking about the Midwest, especially for this time of the year, but still be monitoring the weather closely next week because there will at least be some sort of threat of severe weather. Here's the future radar for the next really 7 to 10 days. Notice this first storm arrives Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Showers and storms across areas in Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. That will allow for isolated severe weather in southeast Missouri and southern Illinois as we go into Thursday. Once we go into Friday, that low pressure system moves into the north and east. A little bit of snowfall back over in the northern New England areas. Once we go into late Friday, that storm starts to move offshore and most of the rain will be gone by the time we go into Saturday. By Sunday into Monday, things relatively dry for the United States, but that'll change as we go into late Monday into Tuesday, where that large storm starts to develop. But again, where this storm exactly is as we go into early next week still remains uncertain. The European model's been all over the place with the exact location of it. Sometimes it's down here in the Ohio Valley, sometimes it's back up in Canada, and really, depending on where this low pressure center is, it's going to make a big difference between where the severe weather is in the United States, in addition to any winter storm potential. Right now, the European model indicating any winter storm threat would likely be back up in Canada. And then once we go into later Tuesday, that shower and storm activity shifts to the east. And notice the European model actually indicates a pretty large line of storms as we get closer to Tuesday into Wednesday of next week. But again, if this even happens and where it happens still remains very unknown. I can't stress that enough. There's still a lot of uncertainty, mainly due to the fact we're still talking about an event that's still about 7 to 8 days out from now. But stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed subscribe to the channel. We will keep you posted with the latest as this storm evolves, and as we definitely get closer, I'll keep you posted with the latest on any severe weather threat and as well as any winter storm threat with this storm. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.